Baseera Khan is a New York-based artist whose work shares an experience of exile and kinship shaped by economic, pop culture, and political situations. She mixes consumerism with spirituality and treats decolonial histories, practices, and archives as geographies of the future. Khan recently exhibited her first solo exhibition, I'm a Muslima, at Participant Ink Gallery, NYC 2017. I'm a Muslima is currently traveling to Moody Gallery at Texas Christian University and Fine Arts Museum of Colorado Springs, 2017-18. She performed at Whitney Museum of Art, Queens Museum, and Art Pop Montreal International Music Festival in 2017. She was also an international travel fellow to Jerusalem and Ramallah through Apex Art and a process space artist in residence for the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council. The past year, Khan completed an artist in residence program at Abrams Art Center and will attend a residency here at Pioneer Works in 2018-2019. Khan has published an art form magazine, Art in America, Bomb, Unbag, TDR, Drama Review. She received an MFA at Cornell in 2012 and a BFA from the University of North Texas, 2005.
Okay. I am going to read you something that will be printed soon. Sorry that it's not available tonight, but sometimes it's fun to drop the ball. Okay. Be careful what you wish. Becky? Becky's here. Okay. Be careful what you wish. Becoming and being an artist brings freedom and agency. In my lived experience, when one speaks their most intimate desires, usually they appear in transmuted shapes, some semblance of the exact wish. Wishes do come true, however Frankensteinian they may be, but are a big responsibility to maintain. Wishes are not magic. They are not divine interventions. They are a collection of personal micro-decisions made on a daily basis over a long period of time. This timeline eventually sends you on a path, a direction, consciously or unconsciously desired. The trick is knowing yourself well enough to push these decisions along a tenable path. Some decisions come from disturbed thoughts, like death drives. And some come from truly productive thoughts for your future self. I think greatness is achieved from the balance of the two. Nothing great happens to those who make all the right moves. How can these accumulated decisions, however, whether disturbed or positively productive, lead you toward what you are meant to do? If I was meant to achieve freedom and agency and provide the same to others, choosing to be an artist and teacher as a combo profession makes logical sense, ? That's not actually going to be printed, but I thought I'd add that. Question mark. Going to school and getting a good education, doing additional residency and summer programs, always looking, always listening. One assumes this to be art school education. A path that gives you incubation and allows for after-school experimentation, provides tools, community, and access. An artist. What I did not factor in the initial process of becoming an artist is that it is dark and twisted, and some may never reach being, let alone becoming. Becoming has no end in the arts. It continues and gives no promises of presenting you with the title of being. There is no linear trajectory. Some enjoy the fruits of their labor very young, some older, some will never receive recognition. Perhaps some achieve a balanced artist title after death. Becoming continues even after you are gone from this earth, and being never ceases once it is labeled. Being a successful artist does not promise a working wage. Unlike other education talent-based wishes, I wish to be a doctor. I wish to be a TV producer. I wish to be and own a business. Becoming is free labor. It is not like taking residence as one becomes a doctor. A doctor may fix our bodies for the right fee, but a conscious artist fixes our psychic space for free. This seemingly endless system of becoming and being is tenable for some and untenable for others. Some are born with institutional backing, monetary sponsorship, a historical or material legacy that guides the path more legibly. Some are afforded opportunities to make their own support system around the process of becoming due to political movements that shed light on the social benefits of their success.
Stop it.
Having certain resources to buy time helps. It keeps the process of becoming alive while living your split life as a human citizen of this earth. The life you share with your loved ones is always parallel to the process of becoming and being an artist. That's my sister. One of my sisters. There are some sisters here. Okay. It is a persona whom your loved ones will never know. You are making a split of your identity consciously when you get closer and closer to the inner sanctum of art. This sanctum, it's a trap. You are always performing. As an artist, no boundaries to it. It is not a vocation. No paid leave of absence, no time off can stop the process temporarily. Granted, professionalization is a system that works within capitalism. You are welcome to pay tuition and educate yourself in a very sophisticated and wholesome trajectory of art theory, making, and education. Society has found that it can profit heavily from the ill-informed wisher. That would be me. And probably everyone in here. And it makes allowances for those who attempt to follow through with these wishes. An artist, it turns out, is not a profession. It is the balance of the disturbed and productive thoughts. Once you educate and your education and experience goes far enough into the realm of the art world, you are forever labeled an artist. How do you maintain a profession that does not pay a living wage? Public recognition is a blessing in disguise. So few experience. A theory I have about public recognition is that once an artist develops a fan base, fans create a social safety net against the institutional bureaucracies. Fans are the checks and balance. Fans may be the one space left where you can achieve the raw, undying support for your work and your working life. The fan cares about your personal day-to-day. If you are in pain, if you are unable to live a tenable life, the fan wants you to create and nothing else. They are waiting for more. If something is getting in the way of that, your fan will provide a raw kind of support which colleagues, friends, and families are too filtered and socially constricted and constructed to offer. This theory is challenging. A fan does not know who you really are, but I gave up a large part of me to be an artist, so maybe that fan knows about me more than I know about myself. Without a following, it is not possible for someone without resources to continue the noble path of becoming anything in the humanities as a profession. Clearly, I am the ill-informed. I wished and still wish to have freedom and agency, to be an artist and teacher. I have the hunch that I am good at making work. Whatever it takes to look like or be like, it's easy and provides sensual feelings, spiritual fulfillment. It is this, my constant search for ecstatic experience, that keeps me thirsty. Thirsty enough to endure the darkness. I trust my instincts, and I have studied hard and have worked every job under the sun to stay in the art world. I try to turn my syllabus over and upside down. I stretch them so my students can get the most from their studio courses. In the end, it is a numbers game. But is it though? Sometimes you just fall through the cracks, and if there is no support, you just keep falling. I plan to sling and grift and fight to maintain my wish. In undergraduate school, a professor told me that I will get struck by lightning sooner than I would become an artist. He said, I had something special that other students did not readily have on hand. This special something was that I do not exist. No archive, no legacy to follow. I am Frankensteinian. If I stay in my lane, he said, one lane, be an Indian, be a brown David Sally, as I was painting at the time. Facts. As I moved through becoming and being an artist, I realized there is a kind of loss involved in achieving small senses of freedom and agency. I promise you all that I will never stay in my lane. I will never play by your rules. And for that reason, I am mourning my freedom. When I look closer to the spaces of freedom and agency, I see they don't really exist. Being an artist who is black or brown, who is also Muslim in the United States, can only be a tenable situation with freedom and agency. At this point, if I fail as an artist, I will fall further into the sunken place where my fellow doctors, lawyers, engineers, and business owners currently reside. The rub is I will not have the safety net of engaging in a real professional working system. No savings, no collected unemployment, and the choices you make as an artist prevent the closeness one needs to feel that they have family and friends. The shift in the culture is also important for me to help change. If I stop making, I fail myself and the younger generations of black and brown people who are also ill-informed. There is a freedom and agency in thinking about youth and the future. It's not that bad. The untenable spaces. During graduate school in 2010 and 12 at Cornell University, I have quit the path of artist, rejecting the ambition of public recognition, the path of profession, and inverted into a private artist life. I mostly used my studio in school as a live-in library, having checked out any book of worth from the stacks, the main stacks of the library. I did random work, meaning I swung from my hip and took a shot at whatever I wanted. Okay, where am I? I swung from my hip and took a shot at whatever I wanted. With no future presentation in mind, I became a master at distracting my committee members from getting answers for my thesis work. I instead explored the scholarship of other academic fields, mostly German, African, and government studies. If freedom and agency is what I sought after and becoming an artist was an untenable space for me, at least I could study why black and brown people in this country are othered by their own kind, while they are simultaneously marginalized by the laws and policies of majority white cis male counterparts and how they maintain these policies. I was convinced that Rousseau really fucked us with the social contract, and took classes with a woman who was camping in the German-French government department. She studied with Derrida, Jameson, and Foucault. She dressed like a work of art, and had the spirit of freedom and agency that I was desperately seeking. She believed in me and siphoned advice given to her by Derrida about being illegible and unseen. When you want to understand why being brown is so hard in the United States, you can't really go to a department to learn about it. The process is a lot like my theory on wishing or fandom. It is a complex system of choices that come together in a Frankensteinian map. My antidote to alienation, it turns out, lied within the historical documentation of French and Haitian Revolution, the writers and activists who came out of Martinique. I took classes with a man who started the Africana Studies department at Cornell. He brought legibility and scholarship to Black artists in America. He taught me that being a brown artist is complex, unachievable, and remains largely illegible in America. He would place his hand on my head and scream in seminars, "What do you plan to do?" He was applying fire to my disturbed thoughts. He was harnessing my dark side. He was getting me to understand I have no agency, no institutional or monetary sponsorship, no family safety net. So if I have nothing, what is it that I planned to do with this freedom? I was confused. I chose to stop engaging with the art world. After turning 30 years old and finishing school, it was financially and emotionally impossible to keep moving forward without a real break. I started to look into adjacent professions. One would think teaching is an adjacent profession, but without being publicly recognized, artists cannot get teaching jobs in their respective profession. I decided that design and creative agencies was a path towards which I could push myself. I finished school in the best way I knew how, moved back to New York City, and started working at a design and brand strategy firm, while also working as a baker on a waffle truck. In between the 14-hour daily shifts, more when there was a design deadline, I spent my time with one person whom I met during graduate school, who runs a nonprofit organization in the Lower East Side. It was with this person I learned more about becoming and being an artist than any school could ever provide. It was in this person, when she looked at me, I had the energy to not give up making work. I finally found a mentor in the art world who was also ill-informed and tooled to handle the darkness of our choices, because not making work meant worse. When the principals of the design and brand strategy firm felt stressed, they would take an Uber before Uber was the low-key replacement for MTA. Everywhere they needed to go. They had private rooms at hospitals to receive vitamin C or pregnant lady urine injections to attempt a fashionable wellness. It's a thing. While gorging themselves with pastries from the local shops surrounding our studios at Union Square. We sat around a gigantic ovular marble table, and I was forced to chant and conjure Eastern spiritual practices to mess with the client's force field. When clients came into the office, they would shove me in front of them and say I led a yoga class at the studio for lunches. I did not. I was sexually harassed multiple times by my superior and sworn to silence if I filed a lawsuit for any number of misconduct that occurred in this occult of a firm. In 2013 and 14, I disengaged completely, no more work, no more art, and sunk into a place more untenable. A friend suggested I apply to an artist residency. And I did so on my iPhone one morning on my way to the waffle truck. I got in. Bitches. Okay. Social movements and change in my own personal constitution. I have some pages, so bear with me. You can use the restroom if you need. Growing up, I had people to look up to, people who inspired me to create and be a leader. Ann Richards and Benazir Bhutto, two women whom at such a young age I assume ruled the worlds. One in the state of Texas, where I was born and raised, I guess, and one in Pakistan. Both were consistently on TV. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Muhammad Ali, two men I thought took the physical hits for me to be safe, both always found on TV. Yusuf Islam, a woke white man who denounced his fame to make space for me as a musician, and Malcolm X, a father figure who showed me Islam was worth fighting for. And finally, oddly enough, Apu from The Simpsons, who just being a part of a really interesting television phenomenon made me proud. When I entered undergraduate school, which was unfortunately in the same hometown in which I was born, I was exposed to a slightly larger community of artists who made visual aesthetic presentations and choices. People like Shirin Nishad, Gada Amir, Shazia Sikandar, Kara Walker, Mira Nair, Chitra Ganesh, and MIA. Every artist I learned about went unregistered to me. They all seemed a little off. I didn't sense home in knowing their work singularly. As a whole group, it was getting somewhere. South Asian culture in America was and is too displaced and dissimilar to expect a figure to emerge from it that could feed into a blue-collar Southern Muslim family from Texas vibe. South Asians have always been too aloof and illegible on purpose. South Asians in America are always portrayed as affluent and aspirational, model Americans, rule-abiding. The bloody truth is the American South Indians were yanked from their geography and thrown into a historical legacy of labor trade in the Americas. South Asians were not allowed to leave the bellows of the ships in which they were captured. Brown people were forced to escape and assimilate into ghettos of other people of color. They were forced to hide and render themselves illegible, with no archive to stay alive. These brown people were forced to migrate to the United States, yet seen to have some modicum of agency. They at least know their geographic origins, some will say. I learned as a South Asian American at 34 only when my father was ill and shortly thereafter passed away. His family was purportedly Afghani, and my mother's family fled from Iran to India. Secrecy is a strategy among South Asians to counterbalance the traumas of the partition and genocidal disruptions of Muslim tribes. Oops. Just look that way. Before and after September 11th, creating the idea of a terrorist was easy to craft into believable narratives. Even fellow Muslims in America were in fear of their own. Being from Texas, I went from a kind of black to terrorist at the turn of the century. The othering experience of being was amplified. Pop culture and media portrayal became possessive and polarizing, and I was left with no cultural figures, no footprint, no mentorship, no scholarship, no institutional backing, no archive. I realized this support never actually existed. A new map was being drawn across the United States, and the us versus them cartography, which was evident in the random acts of harassment towards black and brown bodies, in the rhetoric of lawmakers and news organizations, in movements like Occupy Wall Street with the 99%. And as ever, I found myself either squarely in the them or wedged myself into an us that was never really me. Identity and geographic lineage was increasingly becoming the topic of concern, and America was getting more racially segregated with the rise of Occupy Wall Street, the movement, than I ever saw before. This radically directed, racially and class-driven groups closed doors to other marginalized groups, keeping the 1% from any consequences yet again. The othering tactics of colonial modernization, our nation keeping us from forming effective solidarity when action is critical. I had a newfound freedom. The summer of 2015 marks a big turn in my private life, realizing work can be publicly and socially relevant. Oops, that was during the other part. Okay. Okay. Solely in service of my intellectual and material curiosity, I became interested in making work about the socio-political situations my family was consistently getting into. My older brother was responsible for spearheading an expansion project for the oldest mosque in Texas, which happens to be a few blocks away from where I was born and went to undergraduate school and had my first car accident and where I had my first kiss. My parents didn't know about it. This expansion project hit every legal Islamophobic policy set up to exemplify America's generational anti-blackness. At the time, the Tea Partiers were coming into media to counterbalance the Occupy Wall Street movements. The interfaith mosque space in New York City was in its planning stages, but too close to the 9/11 memorial. Qurans were getting burned at family barbecues across the nation, and my family would wake up daily to their poisoned fig trees and toilet paper ornamenting the front yard. All of the members in my family have struggled with hate crimes such as threats to seize property, lawsuits, disbarment from their respective professions, and physical assault. This has, to the best of my knowledge, been happening since 2008. Anything before that plays by the rule of South Asian secrecy. I think on these events when navigating untenable spaces and becoming an artist. In the spirit of owned disruption and undocumented historical, familial, and art historical legacy, in order not to feed the American capitalist myth of the South, my newly found freedom away from the vestiges of art historical legacy, I began a photo project where I documented boxes in my father's garage, and that father's garage that were left behind by a Palestinian graduate student. And that's what that is. Let's see what this is. Yeah? That's all her stuff. I'll leave that up for a minute. She was deported in 2011 from Denton, Texas, where she also volunteered to teach at the Sunday school of our local mosque. My father was a chemistry professor and came to the United States to study at the same school 40 years prior to her arrival. He remained undocumented and unrequited as to what he was meant to do, his wish. The student was a medical sociologist, PhD, gathering new data for the UN, whose statistical data about child abuse in the war zone had not changed since the 70s. She wanted to document the new form of a person that is developed in environments such as Palestine, where there was so much war and upheaval, a child simply cannot be profiled with the same sense of psychology as those whose lives form in safer environments. I clearly felt invested because South Asia is a geography still suffering from British mandates and colonial bureaucracy, built to keep people in their station and society, built to born children into a constant state of unrest and abuse. This system, much like the United States, targets people of color, people such as my family who come from Black Dravidian and Arab descent, people who are not seen as belonging to nation but are expected to take one for the team and service its elite class while doing so. Cute. Okay. Freedom led me to my current practice. The work I began led me to a fellowship to study abroad in Jerusalem. For this trip, the host organization asked me to take down any suspicious posts on my social media feeds. After inquiring more about my practice, I was also asked to take down a page of my website designated for my project about Inshira, the woman who stored boxes of her belongings in my father's garage. My profile was broadly assumed by my host organization. I was Indian, which I am. My travel plans were catered towards being Hindu, meaning less of a question to pass airport security in Tel Aviv on my way to Jerusalem. Several days after understanding that I come from Muslim heritage and have ties to Iran and Afghanistan, my host invited me to their offices to discuss itineraries. The organization was very taken back to learn my name in Arabic, that I am Muslim and I am not solely Indian. As news broke about El Al Airs employing Israeli military intelligence as informants standing in as employed airline security, they suggested switching my travel plans to fly through Belgian Airways. They shrugged their shoulders and assumed I was agnostic or atheist and suggested I confirm their assumptions at the airport in Tel Aviv. All was settled in, and I began to understand that one of my mediums in text is text. I did not take down the photo series from my website. Instead, the title of the series was Inshira, meaning solace in Arabic. Sort of. I started to think of the faces of the boxes in art historical terms and began to rewrite the page description as proposing for stone engravings or reliefs that I wish to do in the future. So, if somebody wants to help me do that. Okay. The reliefs of our current corporate power structures and spiritual guides, Kellogg's mini frosted wheat, so on and so forth. What's my time? Do I have time? 4 minutes? Okay. Eyes without a face. Okay, so I'm gonna switch it up and just read one or two things from the journal when I was on my fellowship. Eyes without a face. Eyes Without a Face was a song often on my mind in Jerusalem. Billy Idol, a British singer for a formerly British mandate geography. Idol wrote this song for his second album, Rebel Yell, in 1983. What I learned in Jerusalem was a French filmmaker of the same title came out in 1960, about a young girl whose face was mangled in a car accident, and her father, a plastic surgeon, takes on the moral compass to fix her face by robbing other beautiful women's faces, and ultimately their lives, to use the body parts for his own daughter's face. Billy Idol. He believed that everyone should pay for his losses. Eyes Without a Face is heard on every radio at every turn throughout Western Asia and in America. I think I'm going to stop there because I can't give it all away. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 pages left. So why don't I just do this? I call this Oil and Water. It's in Tel Aviv. You get to see it. It's beautiful. And this is a series that makes more sense when I read. And this is a poppy. It is seen as a place where there is potentially a fallen soldier or a fallen soldier? Okay, thank you.